What's going on, everybody? Shonen Express here, coming to you with another whole package review. I'm super excited to do this one. This is my whole package review of Naruto. So there will be spoilers for all of Naruto. If you care about spoilers and you haven't read that series, definitely click off this video now, because I will be spoiling, major plot developments for it. But if you don't care about spoilers, or you have read Naruto or watched Naruto, definitely stick around, because I'm super excited to do this. This is a series that has really, really influenced me a ton. So, yeah, let's just get into it. So, as always, like I do in these whole package reviews and all of my review videos, we go over 4 different categories, right? That's art, characters, mechanics, and the plot. And then I give you my ranking and stuff at the end there. So we will follow the same script this time. So the first thing I want to talk about is the art in this manga. So the way I can explain this, especially in the beginning, is I think Naruto has like a rough art style, but that it's very cool and very detail oriented. Especially in the early chapters of Naruto, the way that Kishimoto draws all of these things, the village and even the characters' clothing, is very detail oriented, and it's very, like, there's little tassels dangling off of everything, and that's very hard to keep up. But especially in the beginning, I think this art style was really, really good right in the beginning. But I gotta say, as it goes on, I think that the art style gets progressively worse, and specifically, the less that Kishimoto himself draws, I think the worse it gets. Or, not even worse, I think the more generic it gets. So, obviously, as Naruto goes on, it's this huge popular series in Weekly Shonen Jump. He's gonna get, assistants to help him with the work every week, and those assistants ended up doing a lot of drawing for Kishimoto. And obviously, as we could see in Samurai 8, he was just the author at that point and wasn't the illustrator at all. So, drawing was never one of Kishimoto's, favorite things to do. However, it definitely, he's very good at it. So I think as it goes on, as the assistants get more leeway into how they want to portray what's going on, Kishimoto just, the whole art style, I think, suffers from that. I think it gets more generic and loses that charm that it had in the very beginning. And it just kind of gets a little worse for me, and it got way less detailed. In fact, I believe there's and you can let me know down in the comment section if you guys know where this is, or post it down there. But there's a interview conversation with Kishimoto about the time skip and the character redesigns for the time skip, and how he wanted to make them the character designs less detailed, because it was hard to draw Naruto with all the little tassels on his jacket and everything, and he wanted to make it more streamlined and easier to draw every week, which is completely understandable. It's super hard, but I do think it makes this art style a little more plain and less detailed, and it goes down a little bit, gets a little worse for me. However, I will say, throughout the whole manga, the art style is clear. I rarely ever have instances where I'm questioning what's going on screen. I think that it's always clear, and the few times that I am questioning, all of those times happen later on, when these assistants are really doing a lot of the heavy lifting for drawing. But it's very clear. The action is always clear with Kishimoto. I think he does a really good job at conveying motion with his artwork. Like I said, especially in the beginning, but really all throughout the manga, the art is pretty clear, pretty consistent in that way. So, all of these things put together, I'm gonna give the art for Naruto a B. So the next category, as it always is the characters. And oh boy, do I have a lot to say about the characters in Naruto. This is one of these categories that I think Kishimoto does both a really good, a really bad, and in some cases, a good and bad job of developing his characters and really making good characters. So I want to kind of, use some characters in the series to illustrate what I'm talking about in the various facets. And so first, let's talk about the character, how Kishimoto does good characters. And so I have 3 examples of this, and the first one is, no surprise to you, Itachi Uchiha. If you know anything about Naruto, you've probably heard this guy's name. Again, if you didn't already hear this, huge spoiler warning for Naruto right now. Alright, but Itachi is such an interesting character. So why I like Itachi and why I think it shows that Kishimoto has good character writing ability is at any point in Itachi's development, it could have been left there. He could have stopped developing his character, let go of him, and just had him be what he was going to be. So we learn about Itachi through Sasuke. Itachi obviously being this big bad that he wants to take out and kill, his older brother that killed his whole family. This treacherous guy, right? And the first time we meet him, he's this villain, this member of the Akatsuki, and he comes with Kisame, and they're just these, he's such an imposing villain. And when we first meet him, it is so cool. It is so cool to see him fight Kurenai and Asuma, and then Kakashi, and even Guy a little bit. He leaves such a cool impression, and we could have been left there. He could have been a villain for all of time, but he's not. We get further on, and we get to learn about Itachi and how he was such a conflicted character. How from a young age he had this desire not to be pacifistic, and so that is what led him to then side with the village so that the least amount of people will suffer because of the Uchiha clan's revolt. This is really good conflicting situations that Itachi is put in. I think it really is an amazing kind of way to look at the world, and especially in a war-torn world like the one that we see in Naruto, where Itachi has to make this decision. Obviously, he's seen war as a very, very young boy. He has to make this. He's extremely powerful and extremely gifted, and he has to make the decision of how to best protect the village, his clan, and everything that he cares about. And we could have left it there, but he didn't leave it there. He then made it so that even though Itachi was completely consistent for most of his life in defending the village and being a proud member of Konoha, it doesn't. Ultimately, he loves Sasuke even more. He sacrifices all of this that he's built up for Sasuke's survival. If he would have just wiped the clan out, right, and left, right, there wouldn't have ever been a problem. He would have never had that issue, but he didn't. He always wanted Sasuke to get stronger so that Sasuke would be able to avenge the clan and redeem the name of the Uchiha in the eyes of everyone, obviously except for the elders who knew. He would redeem the name of the Uchiha and be this hero to the Leaf Village, but obviously it doesn't quite go the way he wants. But Itachi prizes his brother over everything else, and I think that's just really cool. But then it doesn't even stop there. Furthering that goal, Itachi not only comes to understand that he's failed in doing that. Sasuke has betrayed the village. He's a rogue ninja. When Naruto tells him all this, and when he's reanimated and stuff, he understands that he failed, and then immediately has the maturity to understand the way I went about this is wrong. I tried to hide everything from Sasuke, and it didn't work. I couldn't effectively change him. I couldn't save him the way that I wanted to. And so what needs to happen now is for Naruto, for me to put this burden on someone else, for someone else to come and help me. And for a guy who lived his whole life believing he alone had the power to influence situations, to change bad situations, that is crazy. And so when I talk about good characters in Naruto, Itachi is definitely one of them, because Kishimoto just gives us layer on layer on layer with this guy, and every time we think we understand his motives and his direction, he changes it up, or he shows a more mature side of himself. Itachi is one of the best characters in Naruto for sure. Again, if you're a Naruto fan, I don't need to tell you that, you probably already know that, but from cover to cover, from beginning to end, Itachi is a really, really good character because of all these layers that Kishimoto is able to give him. And then, I spent all that time just talking about Itachi. I may make an Itachi video sometime in the future. I didn't this time because I feel like it's just kind of low-hanging fruit, but I have a lot to say, obviously, as you can tell. But moving on, another good character that I think Kishimoto does is Shikamaru Nara. Again, this is probably not a surprise to any of you. I think everybody thinks that Shikamaru is a good character. But what I really like about Shikamaru, and this kind of shows a bigger point in Kishimoto's writing in general, is the themes that he sets up when these characters are children, he keeps that theme throughout their development. He doesn't change it, he just modifies it. They still have these personality traits, right? So Shikamaru's main trait when we meet him is that he's lazy, right? But all throughout the beginning, you can see moments where he deeply cares for those around him. He takes his responsibilities seriously, and he is mature. He's just lazy. But as he grows in maturity and learns to take more responsibility on himself, that it's going to be his responsibility to train the next generation, as he learns all of these things, he doesn't lose that laziness. He'd still prefer not to do that, but he realizes that there are more important things than being lazy, than just lazing about. He realizes that in order to create a world where his children can be lazy, he has to work hard, and he's willing to do that. And that's something that I think that that I can relate with. I'm pretty sure a bunch of us can relate with. As kids, everything is about you. You're very, self-centric. Most of us are, I think. But as you grow, you learn, there are things worth denying yourself for. And so I think that seeing Shikamaru grow in that way, and especially with the loss of his mentor and really, teacher figure in Asuma, seeing him grow like that is so good and so interesting. And I love all the that's not a word, the tiny minute details that we get to see, like how he interacts with his father, and when Shikaku dies, how that works, and how he feels in that moment. All of these things are so interesting in Shikamaru, and he ends up being a very compelling character and a very interesting character almost all the way through the end of the series. And for a character that we got introduced to at pretty much, I think, volume 5 or 6 is when Shikamaru is introduced. I'm pretty sure it's volume 5, actually. Shikamaru is introduced to us, and all the way through the end, all the way through volume 72, he is a relevant character. And I think that that's a skill, that's a gift that Kishimoto has. Also, another character that I think we have to talk about is the main character. Naruto Uzumaki, I think, is a great character, and he's a great main character. So again, I go back to what we said with Shikamaru, and even what we said with Itachi a little bit. These traits that we see as a kid don't leave him, they just mature in him. So all these traits, he's loud, he's boisterous, he's kind of rambunctious and headstrong. All of these traits that we see him have as a kid end up helping him along his way, if not outright being the reason he's able to continue on his journey. So we see a lot of things. I mean, one major moment I'm thinking of is when he learns the Rasengan. He just doesn't give up. He's bullheaded. He will win this argument with Tsunade. He doesn't give up like that, and he keeps plowing through. And this will then help him later on be able to become stronger and stronger, eventually save the village from pain, and then even win the war too, befriend Kurama. All of these things. Naruto's always been a friendly guy. He's always been kind-hearted, and so we got to see through the whole series how he comes to befriend Kurama, how they end up being a partnership, and there's no one that knows him better than Kurama, and that ends up changing, Kurama to be friends with him. All of this stuff, because Naruto is such a long-running series, Kishimoto had the ability to set up a lot of Naruto, specifically, because he's the main character, he could set up a lot of these huge character points that would really help him in the long run. He could set them up that we could see them slowly play out through Naruto's life. I really, really like that. I like the difference between when he's a kid and he first finds Kurama and he says, "Hey, you've been living in my body, give me rent." And then when he ultimately befriends him, or not even when he befriends him, when he just takes some of his energy, he goes in and says, "I'm coming for all that hate inside of you one day." That's maturity. It's not a different... He's still just as brash as he was in the beginning. He's talking to this giant, monstrous force of energy, and he's saying, as a kid, he's saying, "Hey, give me what you owe me." And as an adult, he's still saying, "Hey, give me what you owe me." It's just that he's matured in a way to say, "I'm going to use this boisterousness to help you, to further you." And I think that that's a really good character writing. I think that that's something Kishimoto does really well. And obviously, his connection with Sasuke is very unique, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But all of these things considered, I think Kishimoto does a really good job of writing some of these characters. Unfortunately, that's not all I have to say on the character front. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad character writing in Naruto as well. And I have 3 highlights here, but I will say primarily, and all 3 of my highlights fit this category. Primarily, Kishimoto struggles immensely with portraying female characters in any kind of compelling light. And I think that's a real detriment to the series. I think it really hurts his ability to write convincing characters, because half of the population, he just isn't able to make compelling female characters. so it definitely hinders him. But I do have 3 examples, and I'm gonna start first with the lightest one, being Kagia Otsuki, the main villain, the final villain in Naruto. Kagia is not even a villain, and now we do learn some things in Boruto that kind of give us a little bit more of a reason why she's like not even like a person, she's just a force of nature. But like, if this is going to be your final villain for this epic series, you've wasted a final villain spot, especially when you did have a character like Madara that was very fleshed out and was very cool, could have been the final villain, but you didn't. You went with this Kaguya thing. She was a disappointing character overall, and really, honestly, she just wasn't a character. And so we see that with Kishimoto from time to time, where like something like this, just not a character. But that's not quite as appalling an example as the other 2 that I have. So the first one is Tsunade. So from the jump, from the Tsunade retrieval arc, or the Tsunade introduction arc, whatever you want to call it, volume, like, I don't know, it's like 18 or something, it might be 15, 16, something like that, onward. So Tsunade is an entirely different character in her introductory arc than she is for the rest of the series, and that is such a disappointment, because I think that the character that she becomes for the rest of the series after she becomes Hokage officially is a great character. But the unfortunate thing is we never get to see that Tsunade for more than like 5 seconds before she's taken out of a fight. Now obviously there was the fight that the Kage had with Madara in the end, and she did do some things there, she showed some grit there, but honestly it wasn't a whole lot. And for what is known as one of the strongest female ninja in the world, she has terrible showings in fights. First of all, in her introductory arc, she's afraid of blood. For any kind of combatant, much less a ninja who will be around ninja tools, swords, knives, throwing stars, all that, to have a fear of blood is a crippling failure as a shinobi. You need to not be a combatant anymore, because that's going to absolutely be detrimental for you, especially if you're a specific medical ninja. If you're going to help heal the other members that get injured, that's gonna involve some blood. So for a world-class healer and for the top female ninja in the world, that's a crippling fear, and we obviously see that play out in that initial arc. And one of the really disappointing, I might get to this later, but one of the very disappointing parts about that arc is we have one of the coolest fights ever, what could have been one of the coolest fights ever, but all 3 members have major handicaps going on, and that just takes the whole thing out. But you know who doesn't have a major handicap in that fight, but still isn't able to really keep up? Tsunade. She doesn't have a major handicap. I mean, yeah, she got the blood fear thing, but like, she gets over that in this fight. That's never a problem again. But she still, even when they're fighting for real, doesn't have a great showing against Orochimaru, who's crippled in his arms, and Jiraiya, who's literally drunk off his butt right now. She doesn't have, like, a good showing there. That would have been a perfect time to show how strong she really was. But he doesn't. He doesn't show that. And she ends up fighting with this kid and being this just mad drunk in this arc. It's a bad look for Tsunade. It's a bad look for a character in general. And so, immediately, I don't like her. But then, he actually makes her likable throughout the rest of the series. But I already have this impression of not liking Tsunade. So it's hard for me to then be like, okay, I like her now. She does have very good moments. She has touching moments, obviously. She has these moments with Jiraiya that are more touching. And the one moment where she really believes in Naruto, she picks up the Leaf Elders and says, like, it's on that. It's on the next generation, not you guys. We need to trust them now. That was a cool moment, but again, her character's been so either inconsistent or just non-existent that I don't care. It's not very interesting to me, and so it ends up, this character that could be very, very cool ends up not being cool. And the most grievous example of this, as I'm sure no one will be surprised at, is Sakura, for sure. Sakura Horno is a member of the main team. By all rights, she should be the 3rd most popular character in this series, and she's one of the most hated. And I get why. Sakura is not a good character at all. So, in the beginning, there are brief glimpses where Sakura might be coming into her own. Obviously, during the Chunin exams, we're like, oh, maybe she's turned over a new leaf, but her fight with Ino was kind of bad, just not very exciting in the Chunin exams. So, like, you end up kind of sitting there being like, well, I guess she's stronger. And especially, so Kishimoto doesn't allow the women to have good fighting abilities, as I've kind of explained with Tsunade. And so Sakura, like, has the potential, like, he set her up to be the Genjutsu one, right? She had the best chakra control of the three of them. You know, if Naruto was going to be, you know, Taijutsu, then Sasuke was going to be Ninjutsu, and Sakura could be Genjutsu or something like that. You know, like, he set out these, what they would be best at, and then she ends up being, like, a Taijutsu expert. Like, she just is Tsunade, again. Which is okay, I get it. Tsunade is really strong, and you want to make Sakura strong, but, like, that doesn't take into account the chakra control ability that she has. But, by far, on a character note, the most frustrating part is her absolute reliance on Naruto and Sasuke, and all the way up to the end, this is a problem. At the end, Kishimoto tries to say, like, oh, she was there too, when she, like, punches Kagia down. She helped out, but, like, that doesn't matter. That's not really part of it. She is not able to convincingly, like, be a part of this team. It's Naruto and Sasuke who are carrying this, and she's relying on one or the other. She's either relying on her love for Sasuke or relying on Naruto to save her. And I think that the moment that really broke me when I reread this for this video was where Pain has destroyed the village, and Sakura yells out, Naruto, help us, or come back, Naruto, or quick, come here. She yells something like for Naruto to save them. And why this blew my mind, right, is because this is the most blatant example of, like, the damsel in distress. But she has no reason to say this. For all she knows, Naruto is nowhere near strong enough to fight Pain. On top of not being anywhere near strong enough, she doesn't even know, like, if he could even come back, and she certainly shouldn't think that he would be able to hear her then. So why does she scream that? Even if Naruto showed up, even if he heard her somehow, like got a tingle in his belly or something, and came back, he shouldn't be strong enough to save them. But she just implicitly believes that he is. He's just gonna be able to save them because he always has. That's not true. And she spends so much of the series, like, belittling Naruto's ability for her to just end up sacrificing it there in the Pain arc. This is the problem with Sakura's character, I think, and the problem with most of the female characters is that they don't have any fighting ability, and in Naruto, if you can't fight, you're probably not going to be a main character. And so, that's a problem. That's a real problem for the character work that Kishimoto has, and yeah, he does try to rectify a lot of these more minor character problems in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, but it just doesn't, it still falls short because you spent all this time not doing this, that I really don't believe you when you say that, oh yeah, she's strong now and she's, like, independent, and I don't believe that. You've not given me anything, you're just telling me that now, and she's like, I'm gonna be strong now. I don't believe it, and so I definitely think that's a strike against Kishimoto's character writing ability. And that will bring us to a category that I call both. They're both good and bad. And Kishimoto has a lot of these. And I think it's mainly due to how long the story runs. I think if it was a shorter, more compact story, we wouldn't have these problems with some of these characters. But one of them we would anyway. But anyway, let's just get into it while we're here. But so the first one I have is Rock Lee, and this probably won't come as a surprise to anyone. So Lee got an incredible amount of character development in the Chunin Exams arc. He has one of the coolest fights probably in the whole manga, which is his fight against Gaara in the Chunin Exam preliminary match. It's such a cool fight. Lee is proven to be such a cool character. His, like, work hard ethic, he's a genius of hard work. That is such a cool mantra, and one that's really affected me even in real life. But for all of that good, right, he ends up getting injured, and then he gets the surgery, gets healthy, fights Kimimaro, like, the day after his surgery, which doesn't seem like it should happen, but it does. But even in that fight, he's not very useful. He definitely would have lost to Kimimaro had Gaara not shown up. And this was a sickly, like, deathly ill Kimimaro. But anyway, that's kind of an aside. So Lee is set up as this really cool character, this really good character. He's got a unique fighting style. It's really, really a good character, and a character that was well loved by the fans. The problem is, after his fight with Kimimaro, Rock Lee does absolutely nothing for the rest of the series. And this would be like okay. It wouldn't be that bad because, you know, there are other characters that happens to, that nothing happens, except that he could have done something. There was room for him, but he didn't. And the reason he didn't is because Kishimoto favored Might Guy over Rock Lee. So all of these things, like, because Guy and Lee are so similar, most of the things that Kishimoto does through Guy could just be done through Lee. There's no reason that Guy has to be the one to be in all these fights, to be such a main character that he is throughout the end part of the series, when Lee was there, and Lee could have been that main force. It's you know, it's kind of upsetting. It's very upsetting that Lee didn't really become any stronger, and like, yeah, at the end it's kind of hinted like, oh, Lee's still young, he could get better, you know, but like, after the surgery, he's just not a factor, and so he could still be like a moral factor, like a voice in the story, but he's not. All of that character is given to Guy, and Lee's just put on the sidelines, despite the fact that we really, really loved him through all of the Chunin exams, and I love to see him back fighting against Kimimaro. I really like Lee. I think Lee's a good character, but he's just dropped off a cliff after the Chunin exams, and he's never picked back up again, and I think that's a real deficit for not just Lee, but many characters in this series. Another character that kind of goes back and forth in the series is Kabuto. I think in the beginning, Kabuto is an interesting character. I like his undercover identity. But in the Tsunade retrieval arc, he just gets kind of weird. Like, it gets weird to, like, say how strong is Kabuto and, like, what is he thinking, right? It becomes a little bit of a problem. He goes from, like, this cool undercover character to just, like, Orochimaru Jr. And he spends a lot of time doing that, especially after Orochimaru dies. He tries to become Orochimaru. But ironically, I think that the reverse thing that happened to Lee happened to Kabuto. So in the beginning, I think that Kabuto was not a great character. There wasn't a lot to really like about Kabuto. He's pretty roundly unlikable. In the Chunin exams, he's a little cool, but still not really that memorable to even remember past the Chunin exams. But certainly beyond the Chunin exams, he's not notable at all until I think his battle with Itachi and Sasuke, where he does present an interesting philosophical point of, if I just add these things, if I steal these things from other people and add them to myself, does that make me a person? Does that make me, give me an identity? This is an interesting topic to think, I think, to look at and to discuss, and I think Kishimoto uses Kabuto's character to do that. My only problem is you didn't set up any of those pieces with Kabuto literally before he took Orochimaru in. So I think it was around the Sasuke and Itachi fight that we first see Kabuto taken in by Orochimaru, and it seems like he's actually already had this philosophical conversation with himself. He says something like, I took this in and I have to fight for my life to stay me. And so you would think he had this breakthrough already, but it's not until Itachi and Sasuke go to fight him again that he like has to redo this, but like in front of us. And so I think this is a good moral, and I think at the end Kabuto ends up being a cool character, very interesting. I love that he comes back and saves Sasuke's life at the end. That's really cool. But all of that together make me just kind of like go on Kabuto. Like, I don't know if I like him or don't like him by the end of the story, and that's not great character writing, but like, it's not terrible character writing. So I'm kind of in the middle on that. And the last one that I'm absolutely in the middle with is Sasuke. Sasuke starts out a very cool character. When we first meet him, he's super, super cool, but he's got that edge that, as a 10, 12-year-old kid, when I first read Naruto, I was like, whoa, Sasuke's so cool, he's so edgy. I was definitely into that when I was a kid, but like, it's as the story goes on, and as he goes further and further away from the beaten path, right, away from the Leaf Village, he just like stops being a character for me, and like, just is like this force of like whatever Kishimoto needs him to be. So like, he switches from like I'm with Orochimaru to I killed Orochimaru, and then I'm after Itachi, and now I'm so mad that Itachi died that I'm gonna destroy the whole Leaf Village. Like, he flip-flops so much on the, like, not just a little bit, but like huge flip-flops that I don't believe it. And like, it's even kind of hinted at in the story, like when he comes back and says, I'm gonna be Hokage, and all of his friends are like, what are you even talking about? Like, they don't believe him, and I certainly don't believe him. And so it's not until the very end, till his fight with Naruto, I think, again, I think after the time skip, all the way up into the time that he fights Naruto, this is the Sasuke that I'm like, this is just a bad character. He's like a force of nature. He's not a real character. And, like, I don't know anything about what he thinks or feel. Like, I guess I get it, but, like, it doesn't matter. There's one exception. There's this scene where he cries on this rock after learning about Itachi's past. And that actually is emotional, I think. It invokes this emotion. But he's not, like, other than that, I don't care about him at all. And I should care about him. He's one of the main two characters. He's our main protagonist's main goal. So I absolutely should care about Sasuke. I should care about getting him back. But I don't care about Sasuke, like, at all throughout this manga, except in the beginning, in the first part of Naruto, and all the way when they finally have their second fight. I care a little bit, but even then, he's done so much to already sully the reputation that I'm not that into it. And so I put him in this both category. And so all of these things put together, this is a very long character section, but there's a lot of characters in Naruto. But all of this put together leaves me with a very, like, middle of the road kind of opinion about this. And so to rate the characters in Naruto, I'm gonna have to give it a C. I think that it's just good. There's some good, there's some terrible, but I think that just middle of the road C is where I have to go with Naruto's characters. So with that huge discussion about the characters over, we can move on to the third category, which is the mechanics. And so for those of you who don't know, when I'm talking about mechanics, I'm talking about the setting of Naruto along with the power system. And so I actually want to start with the power system this time, and I actually think that for the most part, this power system, the Chakra Jutsu power system that Naruto has, is amazing. I think it's really good and allows for a lot of unique and widespread techniques that are able to, like, you're able to see, kind of someone's heritage or origin through their techniques. I think that's really cool. And it definitely gives a diverse number and style of abilities out there for our characters to tackle. So I like it as a power system. I will say that it gets worse the more it is explained. And I think that this is a factor of Kishimoto not quite thinking some of his explanations through and how he's already explained things to us before. So, like, I have some examples of this. So the first is, the Shadow Clone Jutsu, when we first see it in chapter 1 of this manga, right? It's supposed to be this crazy, first of all, it's supposed to be a forbidden jutsu, which it absolutely is not. And then it's supposed to be this crazy hard jutsu to learn. However, we see a number of people casually make shadow clones. And so it's not that hard to master. It's not that difficult of a jutsu to master. And we see Naruto, who is absolutely inept at jutsu at this time. He is able to master it by working hard through it. Now, I'm fine with that because, again, I think that Naruto is a genius. He is really talented. He's just dumb, right? So he's mentally, if he has guidance, he's very, very powerful. He's very, very talented, gifted naturally. However, he's just not quite as smart to pick it up. And so I get that if he really tried, if he really studied, Naruto could learn this crazy tough jutsu, but then everybody knows it in the end. So, and by the end of this manga, oh my gosh, almost anybody can use the Shadow Clone Jutsu. So it's not forbidden, and it's not like a Leaf exclusive even. It's just, so that kind of soils the first chapter where it's like it's this crazy strong jutsu when it's not. And then so again, kind of sticking with Naruto, Sage Mode is another problem with the chakra, with this ability system. So we learn Sage Mode and everything's fine until we learn that Jiraiya was not that great at it, right? He took on some frog properties. He was, Fukasaku says he was the best at it, but even he had these frog properties. And Naruto is even better. He's able to attain perfect Sage Mode. I'm fine with that. Again, I think that Naruto is a ninjutsu genius who just is dumb. So he needs guidance, he needs help to learn things, but he is very, very talented. So I'm perfectly fine with him being able to have a perfect sage mode. Who I'm not perfectly fine with being able to have a perfect sage mode is Minato Namikaze. And I say that because he says, I'm not that good with sage mode. And yet he's able to instantly have a perfect sage mode, despite saying he's not that good with it. And if he wasn't that good with it, but he thought Jiraiya was better, why does he have a perfect sage mode and Jiraiya doesn't? That doesn't make any sense. There's another plot hole in the power system, right? Also, the volume of someone's chakra at times doesn't make any sense at all, right? It does, like, Kakashi says that he doesn't have a large volume of chakra, and we all know how, like, by the end of this story, that's just kind of thrown out the window, because the battle at the end is pretty much continuous for, like, 5, maybe even 10 volumes, so, like, it's not, you know, that kind of gets thrown out by the end, but it's, the volume of chakra is confusing, because it doesn't necessarily indicate the power of an individual. So you could have a ton of chakra, but not know any jutsu, and you can't really use that chakra in any way. But you could know a ton of jutsu and have a little bit of chakra, but because you have such a versatile arsenal, like Kakashi, you are one of the strongest ninja, because you're able to use the info that you have, the jutsu that you have, to the fullest effect. And so I like that, but then by the end, it ends up just being about who has more tailed beasts, and they have the most chakra. So it ends up being like almost like a Dragon Ball like power system, like key level by the end of the series, and that's no good. I don't think that makes for a great system. And of course, there's the Chakra Natures, which I have about 1 billion questions with. So there's like 5 Chakra Natures, but then Naruto even asks, like, what about Shikamaru's Shadow Clone or Shadow Stitching Jutsu, or like Choji's Human Expansion, or like. And we get a little bit of that with the light and dark, or the yin and yang, shadow and light styles. We get a little bit of that with that, but not enough to really fully justify or explain that, despite the fact that Yamato is like, oh, we'll explain that some other time. But, like, I think it ends up confusing the world, especially because Naruto uses it to learn literally one jutsu and then never again. The wind-style chakra nature that he has is never again touched upon. And he learns like one jutsu with it, and it's a very cool jutsu. Rasen Shuriken is really cool, but at the same time, he doesn't really use it all that much. And so, like, it doesn't end up being effective for the story, and so I think you probably do better just to throw it out entirely. But all of that said, I do actually think that the chakra is a great power system. I think that the variety that it provides is really cool, and I think that it is, for the most part, especially in the beginning, explained very well, and explained in a way that is you can easily grasp it. There obviously are plot holes. There's plot holes in most superpowered things, because again, in real life we don't have superpowers. But especially for a long-running shonen like Naruto, there's going to be some inconsistencies like this, and there's several with the chakra system, but I do think it's a good system. I think that what it brings to the table is really good, and so it's definitely worth the mileage. It is an amazing power system, even with the plot holes. But then let's get to the setting. The setting is one of my favorites ever, right? I really like the ninja world. I love the hidden villages concept. I love that a hidden village has all these ninja, and they protect like a whole country, like at the Land of Fire, and in the case of the village and in the Leaves. But I love that. I love that. I love all of that setting. Of Naruto, and what I really like about it is the interesting world building, the little pieces of info that we get about the world around them. So first of all, there have been 3 other Great Shinobi World Wars, and each of the 3 has different details and like specific details, and I think that is so interesting that it just brings a whole new intrigue, right? I want to know about these wars. I want to see these wars. Give me some time with them. Like, we don't get to see a whole lot about any of the previous wars. We probably get the most, I think, about the 3rd, because that's the one that Kakashi is in. We get a little bit about that, a little bit with the 2nd, almost nothing with the 1st. But I'm so interested in them. I'm so interested in them. And then you get stuff like the politics of the village, right? The different Hokages that have come, right? So, like, Hashirama was very accepting. He was open. He wanted the village to be prosperous and live together in unity. But then Tobirama succeeds him and kind of in a little bit of, like, a clanist effort, like, separates the Uchiha. He doesn't trust them. He, like, sets all these policies in place to kind of... He's more of, like, a, I guess you could say, conservative leader in the village hidden in the leaves. And so, like, I love the politics of this world that we don't really focus on ever, but we get a little bit of insight into, and it's very interesting. And then there's like groups like the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist. There's just this legendary group of swordsmen that come from the village in the mist, and we never get to see all of them. I mean, we get to see all of them as reanimated shinobi like later, but we get bits and pieces of them throughout, right? We see Zabuza in the beginning, and that's, I mean, one of the best introductory arcs ever. Then we see Kisame, like, a little later, and, you know, we get little pieces of them, but never all of them at once, right? And, you know, like I said, they are all reanimated at once, but we really don't get to see them fight all that much. We just get them named and their weapons named, which is cool for those of us who really like being on the wiki and, you know, making full playable card decks about the Village into the Mist. But it's definitely... just an interesting part, an interesting world building part about, you know, about this world. And then there's characters like Hanzo. Hanzo was incredibly powerful, and we do get to see him reanimate a little bit, and so his fight with Mifune really, you know, kind of is hyped up by me. But the fight itself is not that interesting until you realize how strong Hanzo was. He fought the Sanin, Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade. He fought them in their prime by himself to a stalemate. In fact, it looks like to his victory almost. And so, like, he is absolutely incredibly powerful. And so that fight gets a lot more weight. And Mifune is obviously a crazy strong character because he's able to match Hanzo like that. I really like that. I liked Hanzo's, you know, character even. But this world building is just amazing. It's one of my favorite worlds ever. But all of these together, I'm going to give the mechanics of Naruto an A. I think that they are nearly perfect. Obviously, there's some plot holes with the power system, but with the whole world building thing, I think absolutely this deserves an A. So that brings us to the plot. And so I'm definitely a big fan of the plot of Naruto, but to get into it, I think the first 2 arcs, so the Land of Waves arc along with the Chunin Exams arc, I think they are nearly perfect arcs. They are amazing. The Land of Waves is a perfect introduction to this world. The fights are incredible. I mean, we get to see kind of the top with Kakashi versus Zabuza, and we get these more minor fights. We get some training sessions. It's a great arc. The Chunin Exams also an amazing arc. We get, you know, a lot of more characters, a lot of abilities. We get to learn a ton about these characters. Obviously, some of the coolest characters in the whole series were introduced there. You know, Lee, Gaara, Neji, Shikamaru. Like, they're you know, all introduced in that arc, and so I think that that's really cool. The main 2 arcs are amazing, and I think that the main thrust of the story of returning Sasuke, of redeeming a friend, is good. I think that plot is good. I'm glad that it's there. I think it's worthwhile, even with the stuff that I said before about Sasuke. I love Naruto's drive to do it. I love Naruto's determination to, even if he has to go down with Sasuke to fight him to the death. I like that. I think that it's interesting, and I love the desperation that causes, because he really views him as a brother. I really enjoy that. And I think, for the most part, taking Kagia out of this, I think the villains are really, really good. Orochimaru is one of the first villains as a kid that I really, really liked. I was almost like a little scared of him at first, honestly, but I really liked Orochimaru. I think he's a great villain. I think he does good things. I honestly wish he would have stayed the villain for more of the series than he was, and I wish he would have stayed relevant, because I think, as terrifying as he was in the Chunin Exams arc, I would have loved to have that continue and for him not to be crippled for the rest of the series. But given what we have, I like the trajectory. I like that he's kind of pseudo-reformed at the end. I think that that's an interesting take, but I think he's a good villain. I think the Akatsuki are a great villain team. I love that they kind of work together, but they travel in pairs, which always gives a cool teamwork opportunity to the pairs that work together, or in cases of like Deidara and Sasori, they don't want to work together at all because they have such conflicting views on life. And so I think that provides some interesting things there. And obviously you get some great moments like with Itachi and Kisame being partners, like Itachi genuinely caring for Kisame and helping him grow, and them actually genuinely being good friends, despite Itachi, not really being a criminal and Kisame being a terrible criminal. They're not enemies, they're actual friends. And I think that's interesting. I really think the Akatsuki is a good organization, a cool organization. And that's to say nothing about Pain, Nagato, all that stuff. That I also think adds to the cool factor of this, and the whole being manipulated in the shadows is even interesting. And I think for the most part, I'm going to call him Toby. I know I said spoilers, but I'm still going to say Toby. I think that Toby is an interesting villain through to the end. I think that his redemption is a little quick. I think that they call it like Takano Jutsu, when Naruto is just able to make friends of everybody. But like, I think he suffers a little bit from that later on. But I do think he's a good villain. I love his working behind the shadows. I love that he claims Madara's name the whole time, and that makes, when we see Madara, that makes it even more terrifying, because Madara is so cool. So Madara is a good example of like all this build up for a character, and then when we finally get to see him fight, he's absolutely devastating. He fulfills all of that build-up that he's had so far, and I think that's really unique in a character, really something that is crazy unique for sure. So I think the villains are really good throughout this arc, and what I also think is really good about the plot is the emotional moments, and I think that Kishimoto really from the get-go almost understood how to do what I'll call like the quiet emotional scenes, right? So there are scenes where they're in a fight or something big is happening and there's an emotional moment, but he's much better at these quiet emotional scenes. And I can think of some later ones for sure, but I think these scenes like where Sasuke is like bent over Naruto when he's like when he's finally leaving after their big fight when they were kids, that just quietness and the understanding of like Sasuke making the final decision by himself, right? Naruto's not conscious, he's out, and Sasuke has to make the final decision to walk away, and he does that. That's an emotional moment. Now obviously we see Kakashi in the rain there, him having a little bit of an emotional moment there, but all of these quiet moments, right? I think that the quiet preparation that Shikamaru does after Asuma dies is a very emotional moment, right? A good, kind of emotional moment. And what will always be the cream of the crop to me is Naruto after Jiraiya's death, where he has the two-person popsicle, because it's a callback to what we saw happen earlier in the manga, where that moment where Jiraiya buys the popsicle and splits it with him because Naruto saw a dad and a kid do it in the village before, and he so longs for that father, that guiding figure, and Jiraiya is that. And then when he dies, he sits there with that just the popsicle there, and Iruka comes to cheer him up. But that moment where Naruto is just silently, just quietly crying is so emotional for me. It tears me up still. And that's to say nothing of, I think that's one of the biggest ones. And the other biggest one I can think of is when Itachi goes to kill his parents, and they're like, even if we walk different paths, we're proud of you. And you see, like, you just see the lower part of Itachi's face, and he's bawling his eyes out while he's holding that sword. Brings these layers of emotion in these quiet moments that I think is really makes these emotional moments. And that brings me to the war. The war arc is good, but at the same time, I think it forgets what's emotional about Naruto. All of the war arc's emotional moments happen in these heated, intense moments, and there can be very cool moments, but Naruto really struggles to make these battle scenes emotionally moving. And so I think that you lose some of the emotional weight, especially because you have a lot of revived people that you already killed off fighting and all of this kind of stuff. It makes it hard to be emotionally invested in the war. Despite there being massive casualties and obviously things happening, there are a little bit of these moments, but that we're not able to sit in them for any amount of time, and so we don't really feel them. Obviously, the Shikamaru and Ino's dads dying at HQ is huge, but we're not able to sit in that moment for any amount of time. We got to keep going, and so they end up not having the emotional weight that they have had. And I just really think that the whole war is drawn out and elongated as long as it could possibly go, and I don't think that's very good for the series. I don't think it's good, and so I am prepared to give you my Naruto hot take, but I'm sure it's not that hot. I think that it would be good and might have been the best thing for the series if after Pain, right, when Naruto is finally, he's gotten the acceptance of the village, because the Pain arc is really, really good. He's finally accomplished that recognition that he's always looked for. That's why he wants to be Hokage. He's finally done that thing, and he is extremely strong, right? And I think actually at this point, him and Sasuke are evenly matched, if not, maybe a little bit of the edge to Naruto. But, so, it is at this point that I think Kishimoto should have just gone on to slowly move us toward the Naruto and Sasuke fight, right? I think that, maybe do the Gokage Summit still, but, obviously have it end a little differently. Because I'd love to see the Kage. I think that's really cool. I liked seeing the Raikage. The Tsuchikage is one of my favorite characters. I liked seeing them all interact. So definitely, I think still do that, but lead us to the Naruto and Sasuke fight without doing the Fourth Ninja World War. I don't think that there's anything in the war. There are a lot of cool things, but I don't think there's anything cool enough that it needs to be there. I think it would be a better story overall if you just went from Pain to Naruto and Sasuke's fight. I think that would ultimately be the best idea for the manga. But hey, I didn't write it, and I still really think Naruto's very good. So it's It's all good. I just think that would be a better idea than what actually we ended up getting. But all these things considered, I am going to give the plot a B. I think that the plot is great. I really do. I think this is a good through line, and yeah, it struggles a little bit towards the end there, but I do think it's a really good plot. And that will bring us to my ranking. So as you guys know, I rank all of the manga that I do reviews on here. This is my current tier list, as you can see. So S is something that I call it sublime. It's something that has affected me in a personal way above and beyond any other manga. This is the top of the top for me. A is manga that I think that are nearly perfect. I really can find almost no flaws with them. B is something I think is great, certainly a staple. C is something I think is good, D is bad, and E is terrible. So as you can see, we don't have anything in the top or anything in the bottom. No S's and no E's so far, which is, good. But hey, we might get there. But guys, after thinking about this for weeks now and rereading the whole series and really trying to wrap my head around what I thought about the series, I have to say I think that Naruto is S. This is our first S tier manga for Shonen Express. And I gotta say, it's because of how deeply this manga has affected me. This manga has changed me in real life, maybe more than any other thing that I've read, fictional thing that I've read. Naruto is so near and dear to me that I had to put it in the S. I think it is one of my favorite manga in the world, so I had to put it in the top tier. And so, yeah. Naruto is an S for me. But hey, guys, thanks so much for watching this video. I know this was a long one, but thank you for sticking with me to the end. If you guys have anything to say, leave it down in the comment section below. I'd love to talk to you about anything you have, either Naruto related or even manga related in general. I'd love to talk with you down there. Like this video and subscribe to my channel. I bring you weekly newsletters every week, along with the Pillow Fort podcast that I do with Kate and Shania, and some of these videos, these more midweek videos that I put out really pretty close to every week. So definitely be looking forward to that, and subscribe to the channel so you'll see them come up. But thanks guys so much for watching, and for now, this is Shonen Express signing off.